Let's begin. But first, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Sky High Stories. She woke to the same grey light spilling through the thin curtains, the faint hum of the city leaking into her tiny apartment. The routine was suffocating, almost ritualistic. Alarm, coffee, commute, work, and the endless cycle of expectations pressing down on her shoulders. Every step felt orchestrated by the demands of others, family urging her to conform, colleagues expecting perfection, and the constant, invisible judgment of society weighing on her like an invisible chain. She moved through her day like a shadow, performing tasks, nodding at conversations, but never feeling truly seen. The exhaustion wasn't just physical, it seeped into her very bones, a quiet, gnawing fatigue that no amount of sleep could cure. She had given so much of herself for so long, always anticipating the needs of others while muting her own desires. Her heart ached from repeated disappointments, tiny betrayals stitched into the fabric of her daily life. Promises broken, small humiliations at work, family members dismissing her opinions, friends who offered advice but never understanding. She felt invisible, as if her existence was only relevant when it served someone else's purpose. Her thoughts drifted, longing for a world where she could breathe without restraint, speak without hesitation, and live without guilt. Why does my life always feel like a performance? Why am I so afraid to claim my own space? The questions churned in her mind, unanswered, growing louder with each passing day. And then, there it was, the final push. A misunderstanding at work, a colleague taking credit for her ideas, and her efforts dismissed again. It stung deeper than usual, as if the last layer of patience had peeled away, revealing the raw, untamed frustration she had buried for years. Quietly, yet with a sudden clarity, she recognized her own strength beneath the exhaustion. She was introspective, empathetic, and always considerate, yet capable of endurance and resolve. Looking around her apartment, at the familiar grey walls and the suffocating order of her life, she drew in a deep, shivering breath. I cannot stay like this any longer. The words formed like a mantra, a decisive promise to herself, the first step toward reclaiming her life. The decision didn't come suddenly, it had been simmering for months, a quiet, persistent whisper that grew louder each day. She had weighed every option, counted every reason to stay, but none outweighed the gnawing need to breathe freely, to live unbound by expectations she never asked for. Her job, once a source of pride, had become a cage, each report, each meeting, each forced smile, a reminder of how invisible her contributions truly were. Family demands pressed in on her, subtle yet relentless, unsolicited advice, judgmental glances, and the constant expectation that she would sacrifice her desires for the sake of appearances. Even the relationship she thought would be a safe harbor had revealed cracks, betrayals hidden beneath polite smiles. And so, with trembling hands and a pounding heart, she made the choice to walk away. Fear and guilt battled with the desire for liberation. Will I be judged? Will they hate me? Am I being selfish? The questions haunted her, but beneath them, a brighter pulse of determination surged, the knowledge that she could no longer exist in half measure, confined by the expectations of others. She packed a small suitcase, taking only essentials, a few clothes, her journal, and a worn notebook filled with sketches and notes of dreams she had long ignored. Everything else, photo albums, gifts, letters, she touched with a quiet reverence, pausing to remember the memories, the laughter, and the small betrayals. A tear fell as she lingered on a photograph of herself smiling with family, a fleeting ghost of the life she had known. Every glance back, every silent farewell, was both painful and cathartic. Stepping out of her apartment, the city's noise felt foreign, yet liberating. The familiar paths that once felt like chains now stretched into unknown possibilities. Each step carried a mixture of trepidation and exhilaration, uncertainty wrapped tightly around a fragile thrill. She didn't know where she would go, what she would become, or how the world would receive her, but there was a spark within, small yet insistent, whispering that something new and profound awaited. As the doors closed behind her, she inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of her past lift slightly. Somewhere in the unknown, beyond fear and doubt, lay the first hints of transformation. Her heart fluttered with a nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years, the quiet promise that leaving everything behind was not an end, but a beginning. The bus rumbled through winding roads, leaving behind the city's constant buzz, honking cars, shouting vendors, and fluorescent lights that never dimmed. Outside the window, the landscape shifted from crowded streets to rolling hills dotted with clusters of trees and open fields, the air growing fresher with each mile. The scent of damp earth and wildflowers replaced the faint smell of exhaust that had clung to her for years. Each breath felt deeper, fuller, and strangely unfamiliar, as if her lungs were rediscovering what it meant to inhale freely. Arriving at the small town, she stepped onto quiet cobblestone streets lined with cottages and flowering hedges. The silence was almost tangible, enveloping her like a soft blanket yet pressing on her chest in an unexpected way. It was unsettling at first. This lack of constant noise amplified her inner thoughts, fears, and insecurities. The doubts she had buried under work, family, and obligations now surfaced, demanding attention. Am I capable of doing this alone? What if I fail? Yet amid the quiet, she began to notice things she had never allowed herself to see before. The gentle sway of leaves in the wind, the chirping of birds at dawn, the warm glow of sunlight spilling across a worn wooden bench, moments that had once gone unnoticed now seemed profound. For the first time, she was aware of her own thoughts, her own feelings, without interruption or judgment. She found a tiny apartment, furnished sparsely but comfortably, and started small routines that brought her joy. Cooking a simple meal for herself, savoring the aroma of freshly baked bread, or finding a quiet spot by a nearby stream became small victories. One afternoon, a kind stranger waved as she walked along the market lane, offering directions and a smile that felt unexpectedly reassuring. She returned the smile, feeling the first flicker of connection in weeks. By the end of her first week, the silence no longer felt oppressive, it felt like a canvas, waiting for her to paint her own story. Each quiet morning and gentle evening encouraged reflection, self-awareness, and the realization that she had been ignoring her own needs for far too long. Here, in the stillness, she sensed the beginnings of transformation, subtle, fragile, and exhilarating. The journey into silence was only just beginning, but already she felt the first hints of freedom and strength stirring within her. The first nights in her small apartment were colder and quieter than she had imagined. The silence that had once seemed a gentle friend now pressed against her chest, amplifying every worry and fear she had tried to ignore. Shadows from the single lamp stretched across the walls, and the emptiness of the space mirrored the hollow feeling in her stomach. She lay awake for hours, listening to the faint creaks of the building settling, the wind rustling through nearby trees, and the occasional distant bark of a dog. Her thoughts spiraled. Did I make the right choice? Have I abandoned everything that mattered? What if I fail completely? Anxiety tightened its grip, leaving her tossing and turning under the thin blanket, heart racing and mind restless. During the day, flashes of her old life returned in fragments. The warm laughter of family dinners, the hum of her office with colleagues joking and gossiping, even the harsh criticisms that had once hurt her now felt like bittersweet reminders of familiarity. Some memories comforted her, the moments of love and support, while others stung sharply like a wound reopened. Each recollection reminded her of what she had left behind, both the joy and the constraints, and she wondered if freedom was truly worth the cost. Adjusting to the new town proved unexpectedly difficult. Simple errands felt overwhelming. A store clerk misheard her, a delivery was delayed, a bus arrived late. She felt invisible again, like a stranger in a world that moved seamlessly without noticing her existence. Hunger pangs and sleepless nights compounded the stress, and on more than one occasion, panic gripped her unexpectedly, leaving her trembling and gasping for composure. Yet, slowly, the silence began to reveal a different power. In the stillness, she could hear her own thoughts clearly, see patterns in her fears, and recognize the strength she had ignored in herself. Small victories, cooking a warm meal, successfully navigating the town, a kind smile from a neighbor, became affirmations of her resilience. The oppressive quiet gradually transformed into a mirror, reflecting her courage and self-reliance back at her. By the end of one long, contemplative night, she closed her eyes and whispered to herself, not with doubt but with quiet conviction, maybe being alone is exactly what I needed. For the first time in years, solitude didn't feel like punishment, it felt like permission to discover who she truly was. The mornings became her own. She woke before dawn, the soft light spilling through the window painting her small apartment in gentle gold. In the quiet, she picked up her neglected journal and began to write, not reports or lists for someone else, but her own thoughts, dreams, and stories. The words flowed slowly at first, hesitant and raw, but with each line, she felt a spark of life returning. Soon, she experimented with sketches, the pencil dancing across paper, capturing fleeting ideas she had once dismissed as trivial. The act of creation was intoxicating, a gentle rebellion against years of self-erasure. Her confidence grew incrementally, almost imperceptibly. She cooked meals she had only watched others prepare, mastering simple recipes that filled her apartment with warmth and comforting aromas. She painted small canvases and placed them on windowsills, a private gallery of her own making. Every task she completed, however minor, became a quiet triumph. Each success, no matter how small, whispered that she was capable, that she mattered to herself first and foremost. Interactions with the townspeople added another layer of affirmation. The friendly neighbor who offered a warm greeting on the morning walk, the shop owner who complimented her choice of ingredients, and the mentor-like figure who patiently explained a new skill, all these connections were gentle reminders that she could engage with the world on her own terms. No one dictated her pace, and every interaction reinforced the sense that she could carve her own path without losing herself. Small victories piled up. Perfecting her favorite meal, completing a personal project, or receiving unexpected praise for her writing gave her a profound sense of accomplishment she hadn't experienced in years. With every milestone, the invisible weight of doubt lifted slightly, replaced by a quiet pride that hummed steadily in her chest. In these moments, she discovered an unexpected truth: strength often grows in silence, in ordinary acts unnoticed by the world. The power she had longed for was not in recognition or applause but in consistency, in perseverance, and in embracing her own abilities. Each morning, each sketch, each meal was a testament to her resilience. She began to realize that the life she had feared might be lonely was actually fertile ground for growth, and that the quiet hours of dedication were shaping her into someone stronger than she had ever imagined. The message arrived like a shadow from another life, brief and ordinary on the surface, yet loaded with the weight of history. A family disagreement had escalated, an ex-colleague's achievements were being celebrated publicly, and whispers of her former relationship reached her ears through mutual friends. For a moment, her chest tightened as the familiar tug of old attachments pulled at her heart. Memories she had tried to shelve came rushing back, laughter shared, promises made, and subtle betrayals that had once left scars. She felt the first tremor of temptation, a fleeting wish to return, to reconcile, or simply be acknowledged. But alongside that tug lay a stronger, quieter voice reminding her why she had left. Each temptation was countered by the sense of freedom she had fought to claim, the strength she had built in the silence of her new life. She realized the truth that had been forming in small moments over the past weeks. The validation she had sought from others had never truly mattered. Her approval of herself was what held the greatest weight. Sitting alone on a worn wooden bench outside her apartment, she let the breeze brush against her face as she reflected in quiet contemplation. The city hummed softly in the distance, but here, in her chosen solitude, she could feel the contrast between her old self and the person she had become. She saw the courage she had cultivated, the independence she had earned, and the emotional resilience that had grown steadily in quiet, unnoticed moments. Determined, she performed a small, symbolic act of closure. She took a folded letter, a draft never sent, filled with words meant for someone who no longer had a place in her life, and watched it curl and blacken as the flames consumed it. Old photographs, reminders of commitments she no longer wished to honor, were tucked away or deleted, fading from the physical world but leaving their lessons intact. When the last ember died, she felt an unexpected lightness. The past had been acknowledged, honored, and released. Rising to her feet, she inhaled deeply, the wind carrying away any lingering hesitation. "I will not go back," she thought firmly. "I will move forward, not backward." The decision was not dramatic or shouted, it was quiet, unwavering, and resolute, the kind of strength that comes from trusting oneself and embracing the life she was determined to live. The days began to blend into a rhythm of her own making, each one a subtle testament to the independence she had fought to claim. She found ways to support herself financially, taking on small freelance projects, helping a local store with inventory, and occasionally tutoring children in the neighborhood. Money, once a source of stress and dependency, now became a symbol of her self-reliance. Each earned penny reinforced her confidence and reminded her that she was capable of sustaining her life on her own terms. She built routines that nurtured both body and mind. Mornings began with quiet walks along the river, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, the soft sound of leaves underfoot grounding her. Meditation followed, moments of reflection and mindfulness that sharpened her focus and strengthened her emotional resilience. Hours were dedicated to creative pursuits, whether writing in her journal, painting, or exploring new skills that excited her curiosity. By structuring her days intentionally, she reclaimed control over time and energy, two luxuries she had never truly possessed before. Connections in her new environment flourished naturally. Mentors offered guidance without judgment, neighbors shared smiles and small acts of kindness, and friendships grew slowly, built on genuine interest and mutual respect. These relationships provided warmth and support, but never dictated her choices or constrained her autonomy. For the first time, she could choose both independence and connection, understanding that they could coexist without compromising her sense of self. Empowerment revealed itself in everyday moments. Negotiating prices at the market, solving unexpected problems with grace, making decisions without hesitation, each act reinforced her growing competence. Subtle recognition followed, a nod from a shopkeeper, a compliment from a colleague, a grateful smile from someone she helped. These small acknowledgments were not the goal, they were evidence that her calm strength was quietly being noticed. In her private reflections, she marveled at her own transformation. I am capable. I am resourceful. I can face challenges without fear. The independence she had feared to pursue now felt like an inherent part of her being, a quiet power that thrived in ordinary choices and consistent effort. Every step reinforced her resilience, each day adding layers to the foundation she was building for a life fully her own. The mornings began with a gentle ritual she had come to cherish, watching the sunrise from the small balcony of her apartment. The sky blushed in shades of pink and gold, the world slowly waking as she sipped her tea in silence. These quiet moments, once unnoticed in the rush of her old life, now carried a profound sense of calm. She felt the warmth of the sun on her face, the cool breeze brushing her hair, and an unexpected thrill that life could be this simple, yet full. Afternoons brought laughter and companionship. She spent time with neighbors who shared stories over freshly baked bread, friends she had met through classes or local workshops, and occasional strangers who became fleeting yet meaningful connections. The laughter was genuine, unforced, and free from expectation, a stark contrast to the smiles she had once faked for validation or approval. She also found refuge in books, reading stories that transported her to new worlds while reflecting on her own journey. The quiet pleasure of turning a page, lingering over a passage, became a daily act of joy. These moments prompted reflections on her past life. She thought about the relentless pressure, the invisible expectations, the days filled with obligations that left her feeling hollow. Gratitude mingled with nostalgia, she acknowledged the struggles that had shaped her resilience and the lessons learned from hardship. Yet, more than anything, she recognized the growth she had cultivated through choice and perseverance. A quiet triumph settled within her, subtle, almost imperceptible, but powerful. She didn't need applause, recognition, or validation from anyone else. Happiness, she realized, came from within, from the mastery of her own mind, the embrace of her independence, and the acknowledgement of her own strength. She could smile freely, laugh without guilt, and savor each moment because it belonged to her alone. The contrast with her former life could not have been clearer. No longer chasing approval or escaping pain, she lived deliberately, fully present in the richness of everyday experience. Life was quieter, slower, and infinitely more meaningful. In those small joys and reflective pauses, she found the essence of her transformation, peace born from choice, and happiness nurtured by her own hand. It was a quiet afternoon when she encountered him, a figure from the past she hadn't expected to see, an old friend who had once been a confidant, now standing awkwardly in the small market square. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. Memories rushed back, laughter shared, arguments endured, the subtle tension that had quietly strained the bond over the years. "Hey, it's been a while," he said, his voice hesitant. "I heard about what happened, are you okay?" She smiled softly, a calm that hadn't existed in their past interactions. "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Life's different now," she replied, her tone even, unshaken. There was a pause as he searched for a response, as if expecting the old version of her, nervous, apologetic, uncertain. But that version no longer existed. Her composure radiated a quiet strength, and it was impossible to shake. She spoke with clarity and presence, no longer seeking validation or approval. Every word, every gesture, reflected the inner resilience she had built through months of solitude and self-discovery. I can see that," he finally admitted, a mixture of surprise and respect in his voice. "You've changed." "Yes," she replied simply, her gaze steady. "I have. And it's not about anyone else. I've learned to live my life for myself, not for others." The encounter, brief yet profound, offered a sense of closure. She forgave the past, herself for moments of hesitation, him for his earlier misunderstandings, and the situations that had caused pain. Forgiveness was not an invitation to return to old dynamics, it was a recognition that the past had shaped her but would no longer define her. As they parted, she walked away with a light step, leaving behind both the awkward tension and the expectation of others. Formerly critical eyes may have noticed the change, but she felt no need for acknowledgement. Her strength was quiet, rooted in composure and self-respect. Maintaining distance, she moved forward, fully aware that true closure comes not from others, but from the peace one finds within oneself. Months of solitude, reflection, and quiet effort had forged a new version of her, one who moved through the world with a calm confidence, self-awareness, and an inner clarity that was unmistakable. She no longer measured her worth by the approval of others, nor allowed fear or doubt to dictate her choices. Her presence was steady, unassuming, yet undeniably strong, a reflection of the growth she had nurtured in silence. Her days now included acts of meaningful creation and quiet generosity. She taught local children how to paint, sharing techniques and encouraging their unique voices. She volunteered to help neighbors with small projects, offering guidance without expectation. Each interaction, small as it seemed, reinforced the realization that strength is often shown not in loud declarations, but in steady, thoughtful actions that leave a positive impact. She also returned to her own creative passions, painting, writing, and crafting, each work a testament to her independence and self-expression. In moments of reflection, she recognized the true nature of the power she had discovered. Strength was not about dominance, control, or outward recognition. It was silent, consistent, and unshakable. It lived in the choices she made each day, in the discipline of pursuing her passions, and in the quiet acts of care and generosity she extended to others. No applause was necessary, no validation required. The confidence came from knowing she had reclaimed her life entirely for herself. To mark this transformation, she performed a symbolic act, planting a young sapling in a quiet corner of her garden. As her hands pressed the soil around the tender roots, she saw a reflection of herself, fragile at first, yet full of potential, ready to grow with care, patience, and dedication. She started a new project in her journal, writing her thoughts and dreams with intention, laying the foundation for the next chapter of her life. The transformation was complete, subtle yet profound, quiet yet undeniable. She walked through her days with a serene joy, a sense of purpose, and the knowledge that she had discovered her own strength, entirely independent of others' recognition. In this new life, she had found herself, and that discovery was enough. Happiness, fulfillment, and empowerment came from within, and she no longer needed the world to tell her she mattered. She simply knew. Looking back on the journey she had undertaken, she realized how far she had come, from a life constrained by expectations, fear, and invisible obligations, to one defined by choice, quiet courage, and self-awareness. Each step, each moment of discomfort, had led her to discover a strength she had never fully acknowledged. What had once felt like weakness, solitude, silence, and introspection, had become the very sources of her empowerment. In the calm, she had learned to hear her own voice, trust her instincts, and recognized that her value was inherent, not dependent on the approval of others. The key lesson of her transformation was clear: silence and solitude are not emptiness, but fertile ground for growth. In the stillness, she had confronted doubts, nurtured skills, and cultivated resilience. The quiet moments she once feared became opportunities to reflect, create, and rebuild herself from the inside out. Strength does not always announce itself. It is forged in the small, consistent acts of courage, perseverance, and self-compassion. She hoped that those who witnessed her story, whether through words, images, or shared experience, would take the same lesson to heart. Sometimes, leaving behind the people, places, and patterns that confine us is not an act of selfishness but an act of survival and self-discovery. True growth often comes from stepping into the unknown, embracing discomfort, and trusting that the life we long for begins with the choices we make for ourselves. As she stood quietly in her garden, watching sunlight filter through the leaves of the small tree she had planted, a gentle smile curved her lips. There was no fanfare, no applause, just a serene acknowledgement of the life she had created. She felt complete, empowered, and at peace, the kind of peace that comes from knowing one has claimed their own story, honored their own needs, and nurtured their own strength. In that silence, she laughed softly to herself, a quiet celebration of freedom, courage, and the unshakable power she had discovered within. She was, finally, wholly and unapologetically herself.